Hey everyone, my name is Michael Wales, and I wanted to record a real quick video about this HTML5 game engine that I started working on about 6 hours ago. I'm calling it Tiara for the moment, and I'm pretty excited about it. It doesn't have a whole lot of functionality just yet, but it's at a really good foundation to where I can keep building on it and making it really cool. I am basing the API of the engine off of Love2D for Lua, which is a really fun, easy to use kind of prototyping game engine, a lot of fun to work with. And my goal is that if you can come to the Love documentation and you see a method somewhere, then you'll be able to use this method within Tiara, and it'll work exactly as you pretty much expect it to, as the Love 2D documentation says. So, like I said, it is HTML5. This is just the default render right now based off of this HTML5 template. We have a canvas element with an ID of Tiara. Right now the engine explicitly targets this Tiara element, and eventually I'd like you to be able to name it whatever you want. Um, this is the game right now as it stands, which it doesn't do much at all. Just like Lua, you have a load function, draw function, update, and then some other functions that happen whenever events occur. This is nothing more than just a normal object literal, and then we're going to explicitly call the load function of our game down here at the bottom. Whenever we call load, we do need to call Tiara's load as well and pass it this object, this game, and that way Tiara knows how to run its game loop. The game loop consists of, right now there's no timer object, so right now it just calls update and draw as quickly as it can, back and forth as fast as it possibly can. Once I add a timer object, it should it'll be much more graceful in how often it calls those functions. So like I said, we've got the Love2D documentation here, and one of the things I have implemented is the set background color. So if we hop over into Tiara and we go into our draw method, which is going to draw the screen every single time, we can call tiara.graphics.setBackgroundColor and then pass it an RGB value. And if we refresh our page, we see we have a black background now, just like you would expect in Love2D. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to actually kind of write a real quick game, not so much a game but a demo, and we're just going to draw a square right in the middle of the screen, and it's going to bounce around and be bound to this box. So our first goal is to draw a square on the screen, and that's really easy. We just call the rectangle method of the graphics module, and you have two options here with the initial parameter, either fill or line, and that just tells you whether it's going to fill in the square or whether it's going to just draw an outline. The next two parameters are the x and y position of the square, and get back into there. Okay, the x and y position of our square, and then the width and the height of our square. So right there we've got a square at 1020, it's 50 by 50 pixels. So now we'd like to position this square in the middle of our screen here. Now one thing you need to pay attention to is 1020 is a reference to this corner right here, the top left corner. So to draw this square in the middle of the screen, not only do we need to divide our entire screen by 2, but we also need to divide this square by 2. That way we're drawing half up and half to the left as to what we would expect the middle of the screen to be. So to get the middle of our screen, it's really simple. We just call tiara.graphics get width and divide it by 2, and then tiara.graphics get height and divide it by 2. And so you can see, oh shit. Alright, you can see we're kind of getting closer to the middle there. We do need to subtract the width, or half width from our square from that, and I'm just going to hard code it in really quick. And so now we are definitely in the middle. Now what I want to do is we're going to want to move this square around. And as we know, because of scope, we've got an update function, which is where we want to put all those movement methods. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this square into another object up here. And we're going to give it an x, and its x is going to be, we've already defined it right here, and its y is right here. And and then its width is 50 and its height is 50. And so if we just fill these values in real quick, and we should, nothing's changed, our square is still right there, but now it is an object of our game that we can then modify here within our update. So let's say we wanted our square to start zipping across the screen right here. Well, all we need to do is update the X value on every frame. And there it goes. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make it also move in a vertical fashion. So now we start taking off in this corner. Now one of the things we want to do is we want to make it stick to this bounding box here and bounce off the corners. So we're going to assign this a velocity now. That way we can do really easy math on it here in a second. So let's come up here and assign our velocities to the object, and they're just going to be velocities of 1. Refresh real quick to make sure we haven't made any mistakes. Still works as we thought. Okay. So now we want to check to see if the upper left corner of our square is 50 pixels, upper left corner of the square. If we waited on the width, our square would disappear and we'd bounce off when the left corner of our square was on this wall here. So we want to make sure our left corner is over here. That way it looks like we're bouncing off the right wall of our square. So if the square of x is greater than or equal to the width of our screen minus the width of our square, we're just going to multiply its velocity by -1, and that'll send it in the opposite direction. Let's go ahead and do the y as well, because I think we bounce off the y wall first. So get height, and we're going to flip our velocity, and now we should bounce off this corner like that. So how do we bounce off the top corner? Well, pretty simple. We just check against 0 now. Or is that right? Yep. So if this dot square dot y is less than or equal to 0, we're also going to multiply by -1, because at this point our velocity x will be -1. We multiply by -1. That'll make our velocity x back to 1, and we'll start heading back in this direction. Hope I didn't go too fast for that. Let's make sure those are lined up. Yep. Let's add our negative bound here. And I did this one backwards. Alright, and that should do it. We should be bouncing off all the walls. Works perfectly. Right here I have a key press function where if I hit escape, it's going to push a queue event into our event stack. This is just how Love2D works it, and it's basically going to stop our game from running. So if I hit escape, you see our cube stops right there. Essentially a pause right now. I know it went really quick, but I was trying to make it fast. There's not a whole lot more functionality beyond that. I do have a little demo here that renders 1,000 pixels at a time on the screen. Kind of show you how things are running here. This example, we're sitting at 24 megs, 25% CPU. If I go back to our binding box example, of course it's the same tab, so our memory is not resetting, but we're only at 13 or 15 CPU. If we kill that tab, let's run a new tab and see where we're sitting. Wait for it to pop. Come on, buddy. Right there. So we're at 10 megs on a fresh run of that. So I'm really excited about this. I'm having fun with it. And if you have any questions, or let me know. michaelwales.com.